my key is you just keep talking until Jamila cuts.
That's what I was kind of expecting.
Yeah.
I was feeling her lack a little bit.
You've got a few more minutes.
Okay, no worries.
Okay. I remember my first ever radio interview. I went into the studio, I was all excited about the prospect of, you know, my first crack at live radio, and sat there for 5 minutes that felt like 5 hours during the introduction, when the announcer, he opened by saying something like, this is in what is the most extraordinary thing he's seen in modern politics. The Labor Party have pre-selected a 26-year-old girl in a marginal seat that they would have otherwise had a chance at winning. And he then went through and listed all of the events that I wasn't alive to see. Went through, listed man landing on the moon, went through the dismissal of Gough Whitlam, a whole range of things, and as if that was the story. And I was horrified. It was before I'd even opened my mouth, and it was sort of built up as if that was something unusual and almost inappropriate.
Certainly in our experience from talking to young people, it's been said that there's a lot of spin and no substance to politics and that sort of thing, and particularly in the case of a lot of the negative attacking and adversarial style of politics, and that's something that can often turn young people off. Have you had that experience? Do you have young people saying, you know, well, if you were a bit nicer, I might consider voting for you?
I'm not going to take that as a personal reflection, but I think that you can have that discussion about negative campaigning with any age group or demographic. The truth is that Australian people regularly say we hate negative campaigning, yet there's a reason why political parties do it, and that is because Australian people respond to it on occasion. And I mean, we can see in this election campaign, for example, that I note that, I mean, one of the coalition's ads around 6 or so things they were going to do, they're now playing the shortened version where the ad is, vote for us, we'll stop the boats. You know, that it is simplified, and the reason for that must be that people are responding to it and they're hitting a nerve in the community. I mean, I think that young people have pretty good radars for rubbish, but at the same time, I think that young Australians are about the most enthusiastic and energetic group in our community. And I think that sometimes people get it wrong when they suggest that young people aren't active and engaged. One thing which I believe the surveys have been showing about young Australians and their political views is that I was looking at a survey recently that showed that young people are much less likely to have a strict political party allegiance as generations before, but that the young generation in Australia today is much more likely to have a global focus on their concerns. Young people are much more aware of the problems in other parts of the world, but also how those problems impact on us in Australia.
With young people increasingly sort of picking and choosing a number of different issues that they can engage with rather than sticking to a political party, do you think the major parties in particular are having any difficulty adapting to that?
Well, I think it's about, I think it's a much more sophisticated approach of young people saying, what's the issue that is important to me at the moment and what's the policy in that area? And I think that that's a good thing in that political parties have to make sure that they're putting policy ideas in place and that they're not taking for granted any group within the community. I think that's a positive thing, but I think it also means that we have to make sure that we've got good communication means with young people so that we can get those messages out. In terms of the move from ideology and from, I guess, blind political allegiance to issues bases, I think that's been a move in politics anyway. We've seen there are a much larger number of people who are willing to switch their vote from state and federal elections or from election to election with different policies, different leaders, different issues on the table. And that just means that political parties have to work hard, have to be responsive and have to deliver.
Do you have any advice for first-time voters?
Well, I think my advice is to make sure your vote counts, make sure that you're informed of where the parties stand on the issues that are important to you. And I think it's about, sometimes people get this view that it's one little vote, my vote's not going to make a difference. Well, it's just not true. And particularly in an election which is as close to the wire as much as this one, every person's vote counts, and make sure you use it wisely.